Daf Yom Kippur, Daf Yud Ches, and we're continuing working our way through the Mishnah that all of these people are disqualified to work in the Beis Hamikdash. Not only are they disqualified, but in fact, if they did any avoid in the Beis Hamikdash, it's mechala, it desecrates, it ruins that particular carbon. So now we are up to the Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph towards the bottom of the page, about 4 lines to the bottom. We were learning about the clothing. A kohen, in order to be a kohen, has to be wearing the full set of vestments. And if the kohen heged or the kohen gadol are not wearing their full attire, they're not a kohen. They're Yisrael. They're a zor, and they fall under the category of a zor, and therefore they everything that they do in the Beis Hamikdash is ruined. Now says the Brais at the bottom of the page. Our rabbis learned. Hayu merushalim. What happens if the clothes were a bit long and they were dragging on the ground? Misulakin. So the way we're learning right now, pshat in the Braisa is that there are 2 separate cases. Misulakin means removed. In other words, they were short. They didn't go down all the way to the ankle. They went a bit above that. Or meshuchakim. They were frail. They were fraying. They were old. The Ovid Avidasa, even though these things here is not really edifying, nevertheless, if it is Avodah Ksheda, it is kosher. But in the following cases, Lova Shnei Michnasayim, wearing 2 pairs of Michnasayim pants, or Shnei Avnetim, 2 gartlach, Chaser Achas, Yeser Achas, if one gartel, one of these items are missing, or he had an extra one, in other words, we have an exact amount. You cannot be moisev, you cannot add, you cannot reduce. It has to be exactly that number. And we'll come back to, we already alluded to yesterday about, yes, it cannot hold on me. If you have extra, is that a problem? So the Bryce needs to clearly learn, yes, you cannot deviate from the number that we gave you.
Was this Baltaisif or is this separatist?
No, we're saying that as if you're not, Baltaisif, you did available, but you still have what you need. Here we're saying it's as if you're not wearing, you have to wear 4 clothes. The moment you wear 5 clothing, it's no longer considered you're wearing 4 clothes. It's not 4 clothes plus. You had a chatzitza, he had a band-aid on directly on his skin underneath one of his clothes, and that's a psul as well. In fact, we'll have more erichin that the kohenim did not wear the tefillin shel yad on their hand between the clothes. It could be a chatzitza between their clothes. They couldn't do it during the avodah. Couldn't wear tefillin during the avodah because it would be a chatzitza. And as far as the shorosh is concerned, they wear between the tzitz. I mean, kohen gadol wears between the tzitz and his mitzvah and the hat. If the clothes were actually filthy, or they were ripped. So this is not just fraying, or old. This is a partial ripped. And did avoid that already. All of these are psulim. Okay, it's clear. Bryce comes along Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel and he makes the following din, which seems to fly in the face of the Bryce. And as a result of that, we're going to have to change pshat in the Bryce in one of the items at least. Merushalin, if it's dragging on the floor, like the Brisa says. But misulakin, that if it's lifted up and it doesn't reach all the way down where it's supposed to reach, then psulin. How can that be? The Brisa clearly said misulakin is also kosher. But Tanya misulakin shading. So now we're going to learn there's 2 kinds of misulakin. Misulakin can mean that you're wearing a short. It's short. Misulakin means the size is perfect. But what you did was your gartel, some people make the gartel so tight it lifts up their kapota. So you made the gartel so tight that it lifted up. Let's say it lifted it up. And that's a difference. The Brisa that says it's kosher, you actually made it to size. The actual thing was good. You just lifted it up. Okay, it's not appropriate, but it's all right. When Shmuel says over here that it's possible, it made it short. Then it's not. It has to be meted. Everything has to be to size. So the Gemara, is not a problem. Here is through the gartel that, and Rashi interesting says that that's how normally women used to do. I don't know, whatever they did. They used to tie very tight and lift up whatever they were lifting up, their apron maybe, and that was all right because it's to size. When Shmuel said that it's possible, the less knew. It was short. Rav comes along and says, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh. Echad zeh means not whether it's cut down to size, cut down shortly, or whether you lift it up. Echad zeh means whether it's misulakin, whether it's mirushalin, psulin. Now with Rav we're going to have a problem Okay, the Mesulakim we can reconcile with the Raisa. The way Shmuel we just reconcile. Depends if it's a short or you just lifted it up. But the other thing that he said that Mirusholin is possible is a problem because the Raisa clearly says that it's kosher. And because of that, we're going to have to learn that the Rav learns him shot in the Raisa. And so Gemara says, Rav Huna, Ikla, he once came to a place called Argiza. Romele bar Ushpizichla, the son of the hostess, turned to him and asked him a question. Be Shmuel, how can Shmuel say Mirusholin Shading and Musulakim Psul? How can he say that Musulakim is possible? That if it's lifted up, it's possible. But if it's short, it's possible. We're learning the Brayse of Musulakim Shading. The same question we had before in the Gemara. Malay said, when answering, Barmina, remove this question. Dahi Deshan Yiram Bachama. That was dealt with Rabbi Yiram Bachama. But if you want to ask a question, ask on Rav. And the question is a Rav Kasha. Because Rav says also Mirusholin. How can Rav say that Mirusholin, that if it's dragging on the ground, is possible when the Brayse clearly says it's kosher? If you can tell me that, maybe give me the same answer. You know what Mirusholin means? That in fact, if you leave it dragging on the ground, then it's possible. But if it's long, then you are, and you have a gartel and you lift it up, it's kosher. And why would it be kosher if it's not synthesized too long? Because we're going to imagine that the gartel cuts off the part that's too long. In other words, once it lifts, even though it's dragging on the ground, but because it lifted up because of the gartel, we imagine that the part that's beyond that is cut off. Very good, but then we have a problem. So how did we answer in Shmuel that in the case of Mesulakin is lifted up? It's because the gartel, but if you learn that a gartel is as if it's not there anymore, it's cut it off, then Mesulakin is not the full size. It doesn't matter what Chatzili you made it full size, but now that you lift it up with a gartel, you cut it down. No, it should be possible. You can't have both ways. Kind of both ways. So the problem with the Rav, there was through a gartel. They make it goyis, and the gartel as if it cut off the parts that in theory were longer. So a problem with Mesulakin. Omar Abzeda says Rav learned the Brayses differently. We learned the Brayses two separate cases. One is Mirusholin, too long, and one Mesulakin, too short. And then we learned Pshat the way we learned Pshat. But Rav learns it's not two cases. Rav Chodatoni. Rav learns it's one case and goes as follows. Mirusholin, when the Brayse says that is kosher, he holds the gartel, cuts it off. So learn it, Mirusholin, Mesulakin is one Pshat. Mirusholin, the clothes are too long, but Mesulakin, you lifted it up with the gartel, so now it's all right. It's kosher because the gartel cuts it off. They avnik shaded. And Taki, the Brayse doesn't talk about, but what would it then be if it was only fit to size and you lift it up with the gartel? You'll have a problem. It's possible because the gartel cuts off and now it's too short. Rabbi Yirmiyah said this idea of Mirusholin, Shaloi Silken, let's say if it's dragging on the ground and you didn't lift it up, because now we have a Machlek Zam Shmuel. Rav seems to learn that Mirusholin is kosher only when you lift it up. He says that if it's longer than too long, it's only kosher if you lift it up. And Shmuel learns the Brayse literally that if it's too long, it doesn't matter. I mean, but if it did it, it's all right. So this idea is actually machlekes tanoim. In other words, what's the idea? The idea is I want it to be a certain size, and you made it longer. If you made it shorter, don't talk about it. It's possible. If you made it longer, do we say it's a full size plus, so therefore still all right, or do we say no, it's not any more the size? It's a different unit, and therefore it's no good. If you make it extra, how do we deal with it? It's a machlekes tanoim. If extra is a problem, says all the time we learn where do you find this machlekes regarding tzitzis. You have to al-arba kamfas in the four corners of your beged. You have to make tzitzis. But what happens? You have 5 corners. As Rashi says, you split one of the corners. So time we learn, or you have 3 corners. 3 corners is you rounded off one of the edges, like they used to do on blankets and rounded off the edges. The time we learned al-arba kamfas ksuscha on the 4 corners of your beged. Arba v'lo shalosh, only 4, not 3. In other words, if it's a 3-corner beged, there's no mitzvah tzitzis. Or maybe arba v'lo chamish. Maybe it's telling you that how do you know to negate a 3-corner beged? Maybe it's coming to negate a 5-corner beged, even though it has 4 corners. But now that it has 5, it's part of a tzitzis. But no, because we have another pasuk. You have one word in the pasuk which comes to limit. Al-arba kamfas. But then you have another word that says in the pasuk, asher techasaba, that you will cover yourself with. What do you have to add that in? You're adding that in to include something. So we're going to include a 5-corner beged and we're going to exclude the 3-corner beged. Excuse me. You have a 5-corner beged. That's what it said. So if a 5-corner beged is kosher, so hamani mekayim arba. So what do you mean 4? You don't even need 4. 5 is also good. Arba v'lo shalosh. Arba 4, not 3. Says the Gemara, how do you know which one to include and which one to exclude? Why did you include 5? And exclude 3? Maybe the other way around. You know why I include 5? What's 5? 5 is 4 plus 1. So you have 4 corners, so you can do your mitzvah, and then you have plus 1. And it doesn't bother us the plus 1 because you have the number you need. And I exclude 3. You'll never get to 4. 3 will never be 4. So one Braisa clearly holds having extra is not a problem. However, the Tanya Idich and another Braisa we learned, al arba kanfes ksuscha, arba v'lo shalosh, and arba lechamesh. We exclude both. Obviously, a 3-corner beged your pot gets into the arba, but the chiddush is also that even a 5-corner beged you're not chayiv tzitzis. And l'chayim, why not? It's because he doesn't look at 5 as 4 plus 1. He looks at 5 as a different unit. It's 5. Excuse me. My lab this one holds that extra as if it's there plus. As if it's not, you don't have a 4-corner beged, it's a 5-corner beged. Okay, that's the machlekes. The same thing is by a kohen wearing low clothes. Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel is exactly the same thing. If it's extra, how do we use that extra bit? Everyone holds that it's not 4 plus 1. It's a problem. It's another beged altogether. No. So if it's another beged altogether, how come by tzitzis, if you have 5 corners, you put on tzitzis on 4? It's not a 4-corner beged. It's a 5-corner garment. Only because Rabbi Nachman Asher Techasabo. We have an extra pasuk Asher Techasabo. Therefore, that's why Balas Chamish has to chayv tzitzis and 4. If it wouldn't have been for that pasuk, Taki wouldn't. I told you yesterday that the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch says clearly these words in Reish Samach Gimel. He says that by lighting candles, he says you have 2 If you want, you can add as much as you want, because adding does not take away from the principal number that you have, 2. He says having extra does not impact on the 2. Here the Gemara learns that everyone agrees. Kuli Alma, if you're having extra, it does ruin it. It's a different thing altogether.
Candles.
We're saying Rachav V'Shamar. 2. So they all talk. So the beautiful Chasam Sofer in Chuvas, Chaim, it's an Ayins. I can't remember exactly which one. The Chasam Sofer this says as follows. He asks, what's the rule? How come by Havdolos the Gemara says you're not allowed to have less than 3 Havdolos, a Mavdil ben Kodesh, and you're not allowed to have more than 7? As if to say, if you add more, it ruins it. And then in other places we say, like Aliyas in the Torah, the Gemara Megillah says that you have to have 7 kruyim, but you can have as many as you want. We don't do it today based on the Rashbats because in those days they didn't make brachas. Right, the first person made a bracha, the last person made a bracha, so it doesn't matter really how many people are in the middle, as long as you have your 7. We make bracha, so those hold like us, that we don't add any aliyahs. But see, there's some say, what's the rule? When you say you can add as much as you want, it doesn't take away from the number. We want 7 kriyim, and we don't say, you have 10, it's not 7. And when and by $1, we say no more than 7. So he said like this. This is the rule. If it's an idea that you created, that you created an idea. Without it, we would never have done it. You created an idea, then you can tell us how many it should be. And if I add more, it's not your idea anymore, and therefore it's wrong. We wouldn't have said $1. The Chacham came along and said you have to do $1. Okay, so therefore you can't have more than it is. But if it's things that you would do anyway, Moshe, having light Shabbos, you're supposed to have light in the house. Even with the wouldn't be mitzvah, it has to. The more oil, the better it is. So then the Chachamim can't come along and say, don't have too much. They're just giving an idea. We want you to have 2. But you want to add more? Add as many as you want. The Chachamim doesn't talk about candles specifically. He talks about other things. He talks about, like he brings some Malchias, he brings some Rishayim, you're allowed to add more psukim. Anyway, so that's the general rule. If it's something that we would have done anyway, and Chacham came along and gave us a specific number because they say this is what it should represent, nothing wrong with adding more. They're not coming to say it's also to add more. They're just saying this is it. Based on that, there's some Achreinim who Paskin, can't remember who either, who say that when you light a candle on Shabbos, the two should be, let's say, higher than the rest, so that we can see the Zocher of Shamar, and then you can have as many as you want. I don't think anyone is medactic in that, but that's what they say. At least none of the Leichter that were built, they all have the middle one going upward. That's it. The rest is all the same. Anyway, that's Chassidus' rule, so I guess that's a good rule. So it explains when we say it, when we don't say it. Something what about the Eidah. So what does the other one do with Asher Techasa? Well, the one who holds that we don't say you add, if a 5-cornered beged, you can still put on 4. What does he do with the extra Asher Techasa? What's it coming to Marbe? Hi, Asher Techasa, my Ovid. What does he do with my boil? He needs to get time. We learn. It says in the pasuk, you'll look at the tzitzis and you'll remember all the mitzvahs Hashem. Prat l'ksus laila. That means it negates big machlekes is shaynim. This is the few places in Shulchan Aruch. I mean, there are a few places where Shulchan Aruch says we don't know who the halach is like, and that machlekes the Rambam and the Rosh. When it says ksus laila, does it mean like Rashi says here, a garment of the night? That means if you are wearing pajamas or something that has 4 corners, a garment of the night. I don't care when you wear it. You can wear it during the day. You are potter from tzitzis. Or is the pshat? Doesn't matter what you're wearing. By day it's chayiv and tzitzis, and by night it's potter. And that's why Asher Techasabo, according to some, includes also a blanket because you sleep in the day, and you cover yourself with it. So therefore, you have to make sure it doesn't have 4 corners. But so therefore, the Shulchan says since we don't know who the halach is like, so therefore we're machmer like both. So what it comes, Pratlik Suslaila says the Gemara, maybe the blind person says, you should see it. Maybe that doesn't mean it can be seen. You should see it, and the blind person can't see it. They should be part of the tzitzis. This is what we need to that as long as you cover yourself with it, a blind person also wears it. It's ksusuma amr, also includes a blind person. So but you have to see it. Not that you have to see it, it has to be able to be seen. And when is that? By day or day close. So we have 2 choices there. One is a ksus laila, one has to be excluded, one has to be included. So you're excluding a garment of the night, but you're including a blind person, maybe the other way around. Why do you include the dress of a summa and exclude the ksus of the night? You can fulfill the pasuk. Somebody can see it. And the blind person benefits from what they see as well because they help them out. As we had in Mar Megillah there. And I exclude the ksus of the night because nobody can see. It's nighttime. Or it's a night garment. Generally you wear it at night. And be'idach, another one, nafkale ma'asha. Where does he learn the ksusum? It says asher techasva. Could have said techasva. Asher is an extra word. He dashes from that. Be'idach, another one, asher loy dodish. We learn, talking about the garments of a kohen, we learned bad. What does the word bad mean? Michal say bad. What does bad mean? Bad can mean alone, solo. And we teach bad to mean linen. But how do you know bad means linen? Bad means alone. And I'm levoda yishkad. Exactly. Bad means alone. So how do we know it means linen? Says the Gemara, bad should be from linen. Bad we say a number of dinim regarding this garment. Bad chadashim should be new. Even though on top of the page we said if it's old it's all right, we're talking about the chatchil mitzvahs we'll soon see. Bad shehei shazurim, that it should be it should be geflochten, it should be interwoven, it should be not just one thread, a single thread, it should be spun with a few threads. And how many? Bad shechutin kafel shisha. Each thread should be 6 threads. Bad, another one, alone, and don't have any other clothes, shall choil imahen with them. As you learned before, that if you have more clothes, it passes. Telling me that the bad has to be made out of linen, and that boots only linen and not any other material. Fine. That what? The bad means new. New? We learned in the Braisa on top of the page. Chadashim means chokin loy, old ones no, but Tanya, meshachokin shenim. We learned on the Braisa on top of the page that old clothes is also kosher. So I was Rabbi Yosef asked back to Baila. Tamech, according to you, you're taking the Braisa literally. It's a bad. It says in the Braisa as well. Bad shehei chuten kafel shisha. Now what? That each string should be wound up with 6 strings all up. Bad l'chayil chad l'chad l'chudim mashma. The word bad means alone. It should be a single thread. Elahachikamen. Not we're learning. You thought we're learning all of this from the word bad, and therefore ask a question: if bad means new, how can we be saying Meshachakim is kosher? So Rabbi says that's not pshat. And how does bad mean 6 strings? Bad, if you take the word literally, should mean alone, should be a single string. Yet we say it has to be kaful shisha. So the pshat is that the Brais is not telling you what the word bad is. The Brais is telling you that bad is linen. And now I'm going to tell you a number of dinim regarding bad. Not that we learn it from the word bad. That those clothes that have a bad have to be made out of linen. Should be chadoshim, but not that we're learning from the word bad. Should be new, shezurin, should be interwoven, shechutin, kafel, shishad. Each thread should be made up of 6. Yesh mehen lemitzvah, yesh mehen la'akiv. There's some here that's a good idea, new clothes a good idea, and the rest are all ma'akiv, including kafel shisha. We'll learn later on how do we know that. Those are all critical. Memai the high bad case. Now let's start from the beginning. How do you know bad means linen? In the very beginning of all this, we say bad is linen. How do you know bad means linen? The word bad is davar single. It's the only thing that oilim in a karka that grows from the ground, bad bevad, one stalk at a time. From each seed, only one stalk comes out. Maybe ema amra, maybe it's wool, and one hair grows out at a time from the sheep. So he said the emra mifzol awad, they split. They as they grow, the hair splits. So it's not bad. Oh, and linen also you have to bang it and break in order to get to the linen part from the flax. From the flaxseed together the linen, you have to break it. It's also breaking. Yeah, but that's how they lakusa mitzvah. That you have to do an act to break it. It doesn't happen naturally. Mashengi by will naturally. So which word, what kind of material would the try to use the word bad? Single, only when it comes to linen. I learned from the following pasuk. It says, "Pare pishtim aroshim." These hats of flax should be on the head, and then it says, "Umichnasei pishtim," and trousers of flax. Yiu name or linen should be on their loins. Lo yachkru biza. You should not wrap you around and be so around by with sweat. So what do we see from here? It says michnasei pishtim and michnasei bad in the Torah. So therefore, what's bad pishtim? So you're telling me when the Torah says Michal bad, we know it means Pishtim because of pasuk in Yecheskel. So till Yecheskel came around, and he's the very end of the beginning of the second base of English. What in the 70 years? How did he know what to wear? How did the Kohen know what to wear? Well, how does Yecheskel mean? How do they know what to do? And this is the famous Gemara we have a few times. Well, time makes the Gemara Tzadik. The dinim we learn from Yecheskel. Every one of those dinim we learn from Yecheskel. So tell me. And how did we know till Yecheskel came along? L'mashal. Well, time hadam, but after the dove is then Mateiz Moshe ben Lamadu. The following we did not learn from Mateiz Moshe, but Yecheskel ben Buzi Lamadu, but Yecheskel now that said called benechol ar alev. Anyone who's a mummer who doesn't believe in Hashem should not function in the base of Mikdash as possible. But al basar and al basar, somebody didn't circumcise. Big Machleg Zeshanim. Rashi always says that his Mesa Echav. Rashi couldn't imagine that a Yid wouldn't circumcise himself. So he says with the halacha says he can't. Hemophiliacs and they can't therefore have a bris. It's a cause of ashes. And even so, even though the halacha says he can't have a bris, but the fact is there's a mum, and he's not whole. By Abraham it says Tomim is only when he has a bris, so therefore he can't serve the base of Mikdash. The Rabbi Tam always argues, and he says, no, it's talking about somebody who deliberately didn't mala, but a person that the Torah itself says you don't need gemala will use the same word that we learned in Yevamos, that by Noshim is commanded mehiladamya, or like women as if they gemalat, but it's not a chson. If you don't have to, it's not a chson. And yeah, lo yave el migdashi, you shouldn't enter by Migdash. So how they know? They learned it from Moshe Messinai. To hear Gemara Gemilei tells you that it's Moshe Messinai. Pesiyantov has a shita that Gemara Gemilei does not mean, well, Gemidi, Mailim, Bekaidish, all those Gemidis, he says, is not halacha Moshe Messinai. And he brings that eye from before. And he said, but you have to say just a Gemara. But here, Gemara Gemilei, we see that it is halacha Moshe Messinai. But also, Ches came along and put in a pasuk. The same thing about this din of linen, they knew from Moshe Messinai. My lo yachkeru, it says in the pasuk, but they should not wrap themselves around by yaza with sweat. What does that mean? The gartel shouldn't be so high up. See, some people have very high up. It shouldn't be so high up that what do you call it? That where you sweat, and because the sweat comes out with thin clothing and it doesn't look nice. The time you learn, came choygin and the choygin le matter. I'm saying they shouldn't go too low below their loins, but le maile matzle not above and not above their elbows. Because above your elbows, since the part of your hand over here sweats the most, because you're always closed up. Ella keneged atzila yedain. Now what you should only around where your elbows are. It's pretty high up. Regardless where your elbows are, not above you. He says that's the best place to do it. Yeah, in Shulchan Aruch it talks about in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, and it talks about their what parts of your body should touch. I mean, you shouldn't touch when you're davening. It says that don't touch parts that you sweat, and unless it's megula and everything else, you're allowed to. So there's interesting version that which sort of ignores us looking about here a little bit. What parts of your body you sweat, and what parts you don't.
Have it up like that high. Okay.
By the knee, by the elbows, that high. Okay. Hunda bar Nosson once told me, Zim Nechoda, once have a Kaim Nekame, this Gada Malka, what's sang before a king called this Gada, have a Madali Hamaini. My gargle was way up, high up in my chest. B'tisai Nelly. So he went and he lowered it. The king went and lowered it. But Amelie, he told me, Mamlech is koinim b'goy kodesh. You guys, every Eid is like a koyin and you're a holy nation. Ksibuchut said by you. So what do you have it so high up? You sweat. Lower it. Look more dignified. Also, when he came before Meimer, told him what happened. Amelie said to him, fulfill what it said in the pasuk that the kings, when Mashiach will come, the kings themselves are going to nurture you, are going to take care of you. You see, the king himself told you how to look like a mensch, and so on. Okay. Everyone, all our tefillah should be in the skabel. And we should the gula shleim.